HBO is bringing us back to Westeros, but this time it's going to be completely different from anything you've seen before. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms premieres on January 18th, and if you think you're getting more dragons, massive battles, and backstabbing royals, you're in for a surprise. This show is telling a story that Game of Thrones fans have been waiting decades to see on screen. Before we dive in, if you love Game of Thrones content and want to stay updated on everything happening in Westeros, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. So what exactly is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? This series is based on George R.R. Martin's Tales of Duncan and Aegon novellas, a collection of 3 short stories that Martin published between 1998 and 2010. The first novella, The Hedge Knight, came out in 1998. The Sworn Sword followed in 2003, and The Mystery Knight wrapped things up in 2010. These stories are set in the same world as Game of Thrones, but they happened about 90 years before the main series. That's roughly a century before Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and the Night King became household names. Now here's where it gets interesting. This show takes place 72 years after House of the Dragon ends. The Targaryens still control the Iron Throne, but their dragons are gone. The last dragon died years ago, and now the Targaryens have to rule without their most powerful weapon. This raises a huge question that the show will explore. How do the Targaryens maintain power without dragons? What happens when a dynasty built on fear and fire loses its teeth? The story follows 2 main characters. First, we have Ser Duncan the Tall, who everyone calls Dunk. He's a hedge knight, which in Westeros terms means he's basically a freelance knight with no house to serve, no castle to call home, and no fancy family name to back him up. Dunk is a big guy, standing around 7 feet tall, but he's not some noble lord. He grew up as a squire to an old hedge knight named Ser Arlen of Pennytree. When the series begins, Ser Arlen has just died, and Dunk decides to continue calling himself a knight even though there's no one to verify if Arlen actually knighted him before he died. Dunk is honorable, brave, and honestly a bit naive. He believes in the ideals of knighthood even when the world around him shows him those ideals don't always exist. Then we have Egg. Egg is a young boy with a shaved head who asks Dunk to take him on as a squire. Dunk agrees, thinking this kid is just some common boy looking for adventure. But here's the twist that changes everything. Egg is actually Prince Aegon Targaryen, the 4th and youngest son of Prince Maester Targaryen. His real name is Aegon, but his brother Aemon nicknamed him Egg when he was a child. Egg shaved his head to hide his Targaryen features, specifically that signature silver blonde hair that every Targaryen is known for. In the books, we learn that Egg's brother Daeron got too drunk to participate in a tourney at Ashford Meadow, so Daeron shaved Egg's head and hid him away so their father wouldn't find out. That's when Egg met Dunk and begged to become his squire. Here's what makes their relationship special. Egg's father, Prince Maester, wanted Aegon to be trained as a knight, but Egg would only agree if Dunk was his teacher. Maester offered Dunk a position at the garrison of Summerhall, which was the Targaryen summer palace, but Dunk turned it down. Instead, Dunk agreed to take Egg as his squire only if they could travel the roads together, sleeping in inns and under trees, living among common people. Dunk believed this would make Egg a better man than his brothers, who were spoiled princes living in castles. This decision shaped Egg's entire worldview and made him understand the struggles of ordinary people in ways no other Targaryen king ever did. The first season adapts The Hedge Knight, which is all about Dunk trying to enter a tournament at Ashford Meadow to prove he's worthy of being called a knight. At the tournament, Dunk witnesses Prince Aeron Targaryen, who is Egg's older brother, brutally beating a puppeteer girl for no reason other than his own cruelty. Dunk steps in and punches Aeron in the face, which is a massive problem because you can't just hit a prince. Dunk gets arrested, and that's when Egg reveals who he really is. Egg uses his royal authority to save Dunk from execution, but Aeron demands a trial by combat. Not just any trial, but a trial of 7, which means Dunk needs 6 other knights to fight alongside him against 7 opponents. During this trial, something tragic happens. Prince Baelor Breakspear, who was the heir to the Iron Throne and Egg's uncle, fights on Dunk's side. But during the battle, Baelor gets struck in the head by a mace wielded by Prince Maester, Egg's own father. Baelor dies from that wound, which devastates everyone. Maester was fighting for the other side, defending his son Aeron, and he accidentally killed his own brother. This moment haunts Maester for the rest of his life and sets up the complicated relationship between him and Egg. Now let's talk about who Egg really becomes, because this is where the story gets heartbreaking. Egg eventually becomes King Aegon V Targaryen, known as Aegon the Unlikely. He earned that nickname because no one expected him to become king. He was the 4th son of a 4th son. His grandfather was King Daeron II, and his father Maester was Daeron's 4th son. Aeg had 3 older brothers, Daeron, Aerion, and Aemon. Under normal circumstances, Aeg would never inherit the throne. But tragedy struck his family over and over again. His brother Daeron died from a disease called pox. His brother Aerion went completely mad and drank wildfire because he believed it would turn him into a dragon. That killed him instantly. The third brother, Aemon, became a maester of the citadel and swore vows that prevented him from ever becoming king. You might remember Maester Aemon from Game of Thrones. He was the old blind maester at Castle Black who served the Night's Watch. In one of the most emotional scenes in the show, Aemon dies and his last words are about Aeg, calling him by that childhood nickname and saying he dreamed that he was old. When Rhaegar died in battle against outlaws, a great council was called to decide who should rule. They chose Aeg, even though there were other candidates with stronger claims. The lords chose him because he had spent years living among common people and understood their struggles. He became known as Aegon the Fortunate by some because he seemed to bring hope for reform. As king, Aegon V tried to make life better for the small folk. He wanted to limit the power of the great houses and give more rights to common people. But the lords of Westeros fought him at every turn. They blocked his reforms, refused his requests, and made it nearly impossible for him to enact real change. This frustration consumed Aegon for decades. He became obsessed with one idea. If he could bring back the dragons, he could force the lords to obey him. He could use dragon power to make the realm a better place for everyone. Aegon owned a dragon egg that had been placed in his crib when he was born. It was green with white swirls. He and his brother Aemon used to dream about hatching their eggs and becoming dragon riders together. That childhood dream became an obsession. Aegon spent the final years of his reign searching for ancient knowledge about dragon breeding. He sent expeditions as far as Ashai by the Shadow, one of the most mysterious places in the known world, looking for texts and magical rituals that could hatch fossilized dragon eggs. This obsession led to the tragedy at Summerhall in the year 259 AC, where Aegon summoned his closest family and friends to Summerhall, the castle where he had once lived with his father Rhaegar. He was celebrating the impending birth of his great-grandson Rhaegar Targaryen. Aerys Targaryen, who would later become the Mad King, and his sister-wife Rhaella were about to have their first child. Aegon decided this was the perfect moment to attempt a ritual to hatch 7 dragon eggs in honor of the 7 gods. What happened next is still shrouded in mystery because most of the witnesses died and the survivors refused to talk about it. We know that the ritual involved pyromancers and wildfire. We know that sorcery was involved. What we know for certain is that the fire got completely out of control. The flames burned so hot that they destroyed the entire castle. King Aegon V died in that fire. His son Prince Duncan the Small died. And his lifelong friend Ser Duncan the Tall, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, also perished trying to save people from the flames. On that same night, in the middle of that disaster, Rhaegar Targaryen was born. Rhaegar grew up obsessed with the ruins of Summerhall. He would go there alone without even the Kingsguard for protection. He would sleep under the stars in the ruined hall and compose songs on his harp about twilight and tears and the death of kings. That tragedy shaped Rhaegar's entire personality and made him believe he had a destiny connected to prophecy and dragons. The loss of Aegon V and so many others nearly destroyed House Targaryen. Aegon's second son Jaehaerys too took the throne, but he was traumatized by watching his father and brother die. He only ruled for 3 years before dying young. His son Aerys too, the Mad King, then took the throne and his paranoia and madness eventually led to Robert's Rebellion, which ended Targaryen rule forever. So when you watch Duncan and Aeg traveling together, laughing and having adventures, remember that you're watching the origins of one of the saddest stories in Westeros history. You're watching a young prince who dreams of making the world better, who spends his life fighting for the common people, and who dies in flames trying to reclaim the power his family lost. The show itself has 6 episodes in the first season, and each episode is only about half an hour long. This is very different from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, which had hour-long episodes. The shorter format fits the intimate nature of these stories. This isn't about massive armies or sprawling political conspiracies. It's about 2 friends traveling the countryside, meeting interesting people, and getting into trouble. HBO has already renewed the show for a 2nd season, which will premiere in 2027. The 2nd season will likely adapt The Sworn Sword, which takes place about a year and a half after the Hedge Knight. In that story, Dunk has sworn his sword to an old knight named Ser Eustace Oscry, and there's a conflict over water rights with Lady Rowan Webber of Coldmoat. It's a smaller, more personal story about feudal justice and what it means to keep your word. The cast is led by Peter Claffey as Dunk, and Dexter Sol Ansel as Aeg. The supporting cast includes members of House Targaryen like Prince Baelor Breakspear played by Bertie Carvel, Prince Mikar played by Sam Spruill, and Prince Aerion played by Finn Bennett. George R.R. Martin himself is heavily involved in the show as creator and executive producer. The showrunner is Ira Parker, who was a writer on House of the Dragon Season 1. One interesting detail is that the show won't have a traditional title sequence like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Those shows had that iconic opening with the map of Westeros and the theme music. But Ira Parker decided to skip that entirely for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms because this show is so different in tone and scale. It's more intimate, more grounded, and focused on characters rather than epic battles and political intrigue. The series was filmed in Belfast, Northern Ireland, the same location where much of Game of Thrones was shot. Production wrapped in September 2024, and by all accounts it went smoothly without any major complications. George R.R. Martin visited the set and praised what he saw, which is a good sign considering he's been openly critical of some changes made to House of the Dragon. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is giving us something the Game of Thrones universe has never really explored before. A story about honor, friendship, and what it means to be a true knight when the world around you is corrupt and broken. Dunk isn't fighting for power or revenge or any grand destiny. He's just trying to be a good man in a world that doesn't always reward goodness. And Egg is learning what it takes to be a great king by living like the people he'll one day rule. This is the kind of story that shows why George R.R. Martin is such a brilliant writer. He can tell an epic tale about dynasties falling and dragons burning cities, and he can also tell a small, personal story about two unlikely friends who change each other's lives. Both types of stories are important, and both show us different sides of Westeros. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms premieres on January 18, 2026, on HBO and HBO Max. If you're excited to see Dunk and Egg come to life, let me know in the comments. Are you ready to see a different side of Westeros? Do you think this show can capture the magic of the novellas? Drop your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, give this video a like and share it with your fellow Game of Thrones fans. We've got more Westeros content coming your way, so stay tuned.